Everything good?
Everything good.
Ready?
Yeah.
Set. Hey, this week on the podcast, tackling trauma. Is this something we're supposed to clap about?
You'll be clapping when we're done.
Yeah, exactly. Tackling trauma. Something that, man, based on several conversations that I've had lately, so many people have trauma that they don't even recognize it.
Most people are not even aware.
Yeah. So this could definitely be something that is
Life-changing.
life-changing, and we can all relate to it.
Yes.
Trauma, tackling trauma.
It makes perfect sense coming from where we've been the past couple of weeks.
Okay.
You can change your identity by changing how you think. You change how you think, you change how you experience life, you change your identity. And most people who are traumatized and that to lesser or more or lesser degrees.
Morist.
Welcome to the Redneck Channel.
If you're learning English on us, good luck with that.
No, that's how they say it down under.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah. More.
Maury.
Good on you, mate.
Yeah.
No, but people who have been traumatized see themselves as a victim. And you can change that identity by changing how you think, which changes your experience. Therefore, you know, Tom Thibodeau, you are the sum of all your experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you change your experiences, you change your identity.
Mm-hmm.
And I've worked with so many people who are dealing with trauma for 5 years, 10 years, 29 years, 40 years.
Wow.
And they're walking around in this victim mentality, and it diffuses, every element of their life. And we have a specific stepwise process that we go through to address the trauma, which ultimately changes how they see themselves. So if you remember what we're talking about, if you change how you think, you change your experience.
Right.
Well, there's a couple of key elements, and we're just jumping right in.
Yep. Let's do it.
Couple of key elements to understanding how this works. Right now, you don't see me. We've had this conversation.
Yep.
Do you recall it?
I do.
Mm-hmm. I turn out the lights.
Mm-hmm.
What are you seeing? Nothing. And when I turn on the lights, what are you seeing?
Light.
You're seeing light reflecting off an object. So we have to establish first an understanding that what our brain is processing is a mental image. And so even right here, right now in this moment, I'm not processing you. I'm processing the mental image my brain is being given by my visual cortex, my audio cortex. I'm dealing with a mental image. And now that we've established that, then it makes it easier to understand that when I remember an event, I am presenting a mental image to my brain.
Got it.
So my brain is going to react to my memory exactly as if that was happening live and in front of me. Because the technical truth is we are constantly living in the past. We're constantly processing what has occurred in the past. You're nodding your head because you're thinking about what?
The past, what you just said.
What I just said in the past. So 1 second ago, 1 minute ago, 1 hour ago is irrelevant to your brain. It is dealing with a memory of something that has occurred in the past.
Yeah.
So
it makes sense.
So now that we've established what we are dealing with 24/7 are technically memories. So the tools we use in present life technically are the exact same tools we use in processing the past.
Yep.
So people with trauma, their biggest hurdle, what gets in their way is the trauma reaction.
Okay.
And so what the trauma reaction is, and you may hear people refer to it as being triggered.
Sure.
And so what's happening is trauma. a traumatic experience is one that involves a threat to your life, physical integrity, complete loss control of your body, but it is a horrifying event.
Sure.
And you either experience it being done to you, or you can experience it by witnessing it happen to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's even a lesser common, but well-known, by hearing somebody else talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's happening is, we just established that I'm always processing memories, right? My brain is processing mental images that is being given.
Yep.
Well, people who are highly empathetic, when you tell them a story, they empathize with you. They feel what it feels like to have been in your shoes.
Mm-hmm.
So if a highly empathetic person is being told these tragic, traumatic stories, they experience it similarly as if it was happening to them.
Mm.
So they can be traumatized from hearing the story.
Man.
So trauma is life-threatening, physical threatening, loss of integrity of the body. It is a horrifying event. When it occurs, we feel horrified. Now it's in the past. So when I remember it, when I present that mental image to my brain responds as if it's really happening again.
Hmm.
So a memory will now trigger the horrifying feeling. Now there's another element that gets involved here, and I don't want to get lost in the weeds, but it's a Pavlovian response, is classical conditioning, where an emotional reaction gets attached to something else. So, for example, if you play a lot of rock and roll music and you show me your car, the rock and roll music excites me and I see your car. And so my excitement can get transferred to the car.
Hmm.
So now I see your car and I feel excited, even though the music's not playing anymore. And so this is a kind of a Pavlovian response where I am conditioned to respond to your car with excitement, even though it's just a hunk of metal and rubber.
Sure.
So when I'm having a horrific response, when I'm having a traumatic response, I can then have that response attached to cars, vehicles, fire, colors, smell, colognes. And so I smell the cologne and my body reacts automatically with this horrific response, this traumatic response. So people are triggered back to that original horrific response, that trauma. They're triggered either by remembering it or they're triggered by something that reminds them of it. And so when a person becomes triggered, they have that horrifying feeling again. They have that horrifying experience again, which is commonly known as fight or flight.
Gotcha.
So when somebody is threatening me with a gun, I go into fight or flight mode. My heart's beating fast, my muscles are tense, the adrenaline's flowing, and I'm getting a tunnel vision on the gun. And the only options coming to my mind right now are fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
And so in this moment that I'm staring down a barrel of a gun, I can't balance the checkbook. I can't participate in a conversation. My whole existence is surrounding survival in this moment. So it's really hard to concentrate or think about anything else. So now this is the response, fight or flight, to a horrific memory, to something that triggers me to the horrific memory. So I may be walking through the grocery store, smell the cologne, and go into this fight or flight mode. And I may or may not know why.
Right. May not have any idea what the memory is, but the trigger is there. And all of a sudden you feel a certain way. I've always said that I must have had some kind of a traumatic experience when I heard the song Dream Weaver. You know this song?
I think the song can make a traumatic response in anybody.
Dream Weaver, because every time that song comes on, I have this completely just sad feeling. And it's not the song.
No.
Something, and I have no idea what that would be. I was either...
Your 8th grade sweetheart broke up with you. That song's playing on the radio.
Happened to be playing. Yep.
That's exactly how it occurs.
Yeah.
A friend of mine bought a brand new pair of tennis shoes, and he's so excited to get those new shoes. And he goes home that Friday from the store, and new tennis shoes smell.
Oh, yeah.
Well, he went home Friday, got sick, and ended up staying in bed with the flu all weekend in the same room with those shoes off-gassing.
Yeah.
And all weekend he's feeling sick and smelling those shoes. And he told me, he didn't connect those dots, but he told me come Monday, it was time to go to school. He went to put on those shoes. He couldn't stand the shoes. They looked ugly. He didn't like them. He don't know what he was thinking the week before. And it was
the whole experience.
That feeling of illness got connected to the smell of the shoe. So people are walking around, if they've had a horrific experience in the past, they're trying not to remember it. So here's the second level of anxiety and stress that comes in is I muster up stress on purpose to shut the memory out. I'm protecting myself from remembering. So now we have a traumatic event that has occurred in the past, and today I am very stressed, post-traumatic stress.
Gotcha.
So I intentionally stress myself out to shut the memory out. So I'm kind of pushing myself into a fight or flight mode unintentionally on purpose. And then you remind me of that event and I go full bore panic. I go full bore fight or flight. So in that moment, I could crumble, break down, crying, curl up, I could go into my happy place, or I could fight. And so you could say something or the car goes by and it triggers that reaction. And now I'm a royal bitch.
Sure.
And I'm just, snippy and snappy and jumping on everybody. And I'm hateful and irritable. Well, when you walked in the door this morning, you mentioned that a lot of people in the rehab community, a lot of people using have a trauma history. And the reason a lot of people either find refuge in drugs or attracted to drugs or is they're self-medicating to some degree because it gives them a respite from those horrible feelings. And so they're walking around stressed out. They're easily triggered. And somebody says, here, have a beer. Hey, I feel so much better.
Sure.
And now they're more likely to start abusing the beer because it makes them feel better. They're trying to self-medicate. We've established that in the moment, I am reacting to a mental image of what's happening in front of me. That mental image is constantly moving in the past. So technically, I'm always reacting to things in my past. And the past is actually a bunch of mental images I'm conjuring up. So I'm reacting to mental images in my brain.
Yeah.
And that reaction is a fight or flight reaction in which my heart rate elevates, my adrenaline goes up, and I get tunnel vision. So in that state, in that triggered state, we may not be able to think. We may go into kind of a panicked kind of thinking where we're assessing threats all the time. Who is he? Why is he looking at me? What's going on? I don't understand.
Yeah.
And so our mind races because we feel like we're being threatened.
Where does paranoia fit in with that?
Well, paranoia is the upper echelon of negative thinking.
Okay.
A negative thinker sees something wrong with everything, right?
Sure.
Wrong, right?
Yep.
But look at these glasses. Yeah, they got a smudge on the glass. They're constantly seeing what's wrong with everything. A negative thinker.
Yep.
Well, when you point that negative thinking at another person, not only is your shirt mussed up, but I may start thinking negatively about your intentions.
Mm.
And so I move from negative thinking to suspiciousness. And at some point, I may cross the threshold over into paranoia. And so why is he looking at me? What's he up to? And then I fill in those blanks negatively. And so I begin imagining you've got nefarious motives. You're going to attack me. You're going to steal from me. You're only talking to me because you're trying to get something out of me. So
Yeah.
the negative thinking rolls up into paranoia, especially if you've been triggered and that anxiety, that panic comes on.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to be on guard for whatever's going wrong. And so my mind is going to be focused on, I say racing, it doesn't move much faster than we normally do, but my mind is going to be racing on what all potential threats are out there. And this feeling, the anxiety, the panic, the fight or flight, the fear supports that paranoid kind of thinking. I wouldn't feel this way if there's nothing to worry about.
Sure.
It becomes circular reasoning.
Yep.
For people with trauma, when I work with them, I do two things with them. One is I tell them, we're not going to talk about your trauma. Because what too many therapists do, my opinion, what too many therapists do is the person comes in, they reveal that, I'm here because I've been haunted by this memory, or I had this experience and I can't. And so they tell me about it.
Hmm.
And so now in the throes of this horrific emotional feeling, they spill the beans about the experience. Now there's a good chance that those horrific feelings get attached to going to therapy.
Oh.
So they walk out the door, they shut it all off, and then, oh, you got an appointment next week at 2:00. And that fear strikes up. So now they're going to start to avoid therapy. And if they're compliant and they go back in and the therapist says, tell me about it again. Tell me more. What did you feel? They're really, in many senses, you're just re-traumatizing them.
Mm-hmm.
Just talking about it. They're reliving it like they're replaying a video over and over and over again. And they're re-experiencing it exactly as they did the first time. So what we want to do is establish that you are in 100% control. I'm not going to force you to talk about anything. In fact, I don't want to hear about it. What I want to do with you first is give you control over yourself. And so step one in therapy is teaching them self-control.
Mm-hmm. Have we talked about that at all?
I don't know. Maybe I have to do a show on that.
Yeah.
But when the anxiety comes up, most people don't know they can turn it off. And so the 30-second.
Talk about the whole, your perspective is either your prison or your power.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa. What a beautiful example.
You can turn the anxiety off.
Wow.
Now, in the trauma world where they do trauma treatment, they will talk about grounding skills.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those are, name 5 things in the room, feel the texture of the pillow. But these things generally, while they're fine, you walked in the door this morning and I was taking a moment, but they take time. And when you are being hit with a memory, when you're being triggered, you don't have time. So you need to learn specific skill sets that you can employ while shopping for green beans at the grocery store.
Sure.
And so that's what we do in the first part of therapy is we teach anxiety management skills that they can practice and become good at and turn on in 30 seconds or less, so that when a memory does rise up, they can take a breath in their belly and start bringing the anxiety back down.
Going full circle back to the 30-second.
And the reason for that is when you're in that tunnel vision mode, you can't think.
Sure.
Your mind's racing. All these horrible things are flying at you. You're panicking, you're dodging, you're ducking. There's no way in the world in that state of mind you're going to be able to process anything.
Which, help me if I'm understanding this correctly, a lot of people describe having a panic attack, but having no idea why they're having the panic attack. So they don't know that they don't think they're having a panic attack. They think they're having a heart attack.
Right.
And they'll go to the doctor and they'll check all their vitals and they're just fine.
It's all in your head.
It's all in your head. And then you freak out even more.
Right. Yeah. And panic.
It's a matter of gaining control.
Well, but panic disorder is having panic attacks with no apparent reason.
Sure.
I mean, if you pull a gun on me and I have that reaction, we call it fear.
Right.
And so, yes, people who have trauma histories, not only do they have the stress and anxiety from trying not to think about it, and then they have the fight or flight when they're triggered, but that fight or flight is very much akin to a panic attack. It can be a low grade, and by low grade, you trauma people know what I'm talking about. Low grade, maybe a 8 or a 9 on the scale, where I'm sweating, my heart's racing, my pits are, I got to get out of here. I don't know what's going on, and maybe I turn into a snippy person. But the 10, the panic attack, lose total control. That's, present for them as well. And it's, in those moments, we're not thinking. We're literally not thinking. We are in a reactionary mode. We're reacting as if our life is threatened. So step one is to get them the capacity, get them the skill sets to be able to control that and start dialing it back down. Now, along the way, one of the things I do with them is show them there is a plan here. There is a process here that they are 100% in control of. And there's a 4-step process I have for trauma victims to where we work through these 4 steps at their pace. And much of the work that is to be done is done on their own time.
Sure.
And so it's not a matter of therapy is the place where I do all of that, so I don't want to go see that guy anymore.
Right.
But I give them the skill sets, one, to control this reaction, so whenever it does rise up, they can turn it off. And then 2, I give them the plan for how they, at their pace, at their leisure, in their own time, can begin to address the trauma memories. The memories. The memories. It's not happening right now.
Right.
It's a memory. And I am going into fight or flight. I am being triggered by a memory. As they work through these 4 steps, there comes a stage in which they not only assume power over their body, calm down, they not only assume the power over if they think about it or don't think about it, but there comes a stage where they assume the power over how they're going to define what occurred in the past.
And that's where you really begin to change your identity from a victim to a victor.
So along the way here, all this stuff is happening, but also what's happening along the way is they're learning how to control how they think. So as I change how I think about things, in the present, I have different experiences as life is unfolding, but now I can take that new perspective and point it at my past. And now that I'm looking at my past from a different perspective, I change in the present how I experience what occurred in the past.
Wow.
So simple example, not traumatic, but as most people are aware, I was kicked out of college.
Good job.
Yay. And for many years, that was such, great shame of mine. I didn't tell people that. I didn't share it with people over dinner conversation. I ran from it. That's what landed me in the military, was running from all the stupid mistakes I had made and all the opportunities I had wasted. And I felt so guilty and so ashamed. And, my poor mother, who just wanted us to do better than her and to have a wonderful life. And I just broke her heart. And I was so ashamed of it that when it came time to get into graduate school and I'm writing on the form why there's this space in my college education and I'm having to write about my grades. Oh, I'm just so, and I walked into an interview for graduate school and I just felt, completely vulnerable and naked as they're looking at me. This is the guy.
Yeah.
This is the guy that got kicked out of college. Oh my God. That's, all that's going on in my head because at the time I was thinking, should, must, have to. I shouldn't have screwed around. I should have stayed in school. I shouldn't have gone and done this. I should have done that. I shouldn't have done this. So I felt a lot of guilt and shame for doing stuff I shouldn't have done. And then I turn and look at other people and I read their mind. Oh, they'll think this. They'll think that. They'll think. So now I'm heaping your judgment onto me.
Right.
As if I can read your mind and think you're judging me and you're over there thinking, I wonder what time the game is on.
Yeah, exactly.
Wish this guy would shut up. What time is the game?
Mm-hmm.
But in my mind, I was just inundating myself with all of this. Well, after years of my own therapy, but you know what? I'm glad I got kicked out of college.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. Good. That gave me a chance to get out and see the world and to see what life is really like. I changed my perspective of my past, so I no longer feel guilty and ashamed of what occurred.
Yep.
Even though I was responsible.
Sure.
And I can't say I would choose that same road again, but I don't feel guilty and ashamed of it anymore. And so by changing how I think in my brain today, I now change how I experience my past today.
Yep.
So for people who've had a trauma and it's in the past, step one is to learn how to turn the anxiety, the panic, the triggering response off as fast as possible. And then step two is learning a control mechanism for dealing with those memories. And then step three becomes learning how to think about those memories. And then there in the middle of that is learning I have control over those memories when I think about them, when I don't think about them, and then learning to control how I think about them. And this is the process. Now I'm rushing. I'm talking really fast. People are probably rewinding this thing. That is the simple overview of trauma and how to treat trauma.
Yeah.
Now, when I do it, it can take 6 weeks. It could take 6 months. And there's been a few cases where it's taken a couple of years. But what else you got to do?
Yeah. Well, when this literally affects every aspect of your life, it's literally affecting your identity. What else are you going to do? You might want to get this taken care of. So, yeah. Well, that's a great overview. And it definitely makes me want to figure out why Dreamweaver. Now, I don't mean to make light of it, but this is serious stuff that a lot of people can find some freedom from.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
Big time.
Definitely.
The book is something that could be a great place to start as well.
And speaking of the book, the new book cover is at the publisher.
Uh-huh.
They're going through the process of getting the book rebook covered.
I think that's a very technical way to put it.
Another Aussie way of putting things. And the audiobook is completed.
Hey.
And it's in review with Audible. It has been reviewed and approved by Authors Republic.
Nice.
So in the coming weeks, there will be more and more distributors who are distributing the audiobook.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
And
grabbing a whole nother market.
The new book is with the publisher and in review.
Hey.
And our logo and online store with merchandise is moving forward.
Got it going on.
I'm talking with the artist, and he's making some tweaks and things. He's going to get us back some ideas to
cool
kind of approve before he takes a step forward. So there's a lot of A lot of things going on in the background.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. It's exciting.
It is.
Lots of new subscribers.
That's crazy.
It's like we've picked up over 500 people who have actually subscribed in the last 30 days or so.
Wow.
So, I mean, we're talking about 1,500 people that have subscribed on YouTube, plus all the other platforms.
Sure.
And so this thing is starting to get some momentum. Hopefully some people are being helped. That's the whole reason we do this.
Exactly.
Besides the fact that it's enjoyable to do.
Oh, I love it. I look forward to it every week.
Yep, absolutely. Big time. Well, awesome. Thank you, Doc. That was really good and very helpful. Let me give you a rousing round.
Thank you for your voice. Not saying really good. Helpful. Thank you very much.
I was setting it up. Setting it up. Good stuff. Listen to it. I dare you to listen to it 3 or 4 times back to back. It'll sink in.
And if you're still on listening to us and you got an idea that you'd like to hear about, feel free to drop us a line and we'll hit your topic.